You live in the Ghent Historic District of Norfolk, Virginia. One night you look out your window to see the house right across the street from you lit up to its roof. You wonder, how could this happen? Aren't there rules about what people can and cannot do to the outside of their houses in Norfolk's historic districts? This is the story of how Norfolk City Councilwoman Andrea McClellan made it happen. In September 2023, the new owners of a 120-year-old corner house in the Ghent Historic District added many outdoor lights to their house and the grounds around it. They lit their house up to its roof on 3 sides, and they insisted on leaving these lights on all night long. My name is Alan Ray Gregory. My wife and I live right across the street from this house. The view of it fills every window on one side of our house. Even the bedroom windows we open to let a breeze come in through the screens are lit up by this unnatural, unnecessary light, which appears brighter and brighter as the sky darkens toward midnight. After its project review committee investigated the lights, the Ghent Neighborhood League informed the city that it opposed this kind of lighting. Many neighbors also wrote to the city in opposition. The whole point of the city's historic districts is to preserve a semblance of what these neighborhoods looked like historically, including how the old houses traditionally looked at night. The city's historic guidelines for lighting state that, quote, "Lighting should be kept at a quantity and level of brightness which is in keeping with the surrounding levels in the area." But the lit-up house now had more outdoor lights on at night than the 26 houses nearest to it on the same street combined. The city's Architectural Review Board met to decide whether to approve this lighting. Here from the city's public record recording is what the man of the house with all the lights told the board.
I look to other historic buildings as kind of inspiration. So you've probably all seen that building before. It's the Governor's Palace in Williamsburg. Yep. Kind of looking for, what is an appropriate schema light to highlight something historical from base to the top.
But the Colonial Governor's Palace is a famous tourist attraction, sitting in the middle of a sprawling estate. It's not a house in a densely built urban neighborhood where people actually go home at night to rest and sleep.
I want the neighborhood to be known for beautiful old homes, well taken care of, somewhere that's safe, that you can stroll around at night, see the homes, and kind of have a showcase for the community.
In other words, his plan is to turn the neighborhood into a showcase of lit-up houses at night. But why? Anyone wanting to see what historic houses look like lit up can do it, and do it best in the natural light of daytime. So, will this become the new neighborhood reality?
So I've heard a lot of a fear of precedent. This will become the new precedent. I say, great. Let's have it be the precedent. Years ago, in this very same neighborhood, there was probably a fear of a precedent of a horseless carriage going down the street, and how much it would change the neighborhood.
As if lighting up houses in the middle of the night with spotlights is as important an innovation as the advent of the automobile. Maybe his vision for the neighborhood could better be thought of as a throwback to the excesses of the Industrial Revolution, with light pollution taking center stage now. But the outdoor lighting industry is pushing this kind of extreme whole house lighting, despite all its adverse consequences. After all, such excessive lighting requires customers to purchase many more of the small but powerful LED lights this industry sells. And the members of the Architectural Review Board must have bought into the industry hype, because they approved this lighting, despite the city's historic lighting guidelines, and despite the opposition of the Ghent Neighborhood League. One of the members of the board, realizing the city's existing historic guidelines do not justify this kind of lighting, even said this to his colleagues.
This board needs to start working on some guidelines pronto, because this is going to come up again, and we need to have some solid ground to stand on.
So we appealed the Architectural Review Board's decision to the Norfolk City Council. Just before the City Council's formal session, when it heard our appeal, It had a work session. A city staff member was telling the council members about how our appeal would be coming up for their consideration when Councilwoman Andrea McClellan spoke up.
I happen to live right next door to this house, so I see it every day and every night, so I happen to have firsthand knowledge of this as well.
But all that Andrea McClellan can see of the lit-up house from her house is its rear, the least lit up of its lit-up sides. She can see nothing of its front nor its broad side that faces my house. Then she said this.
I also walk on that sidewalk, walk my dogs there. Mysteriously, the bushes were trimmed by the lights by the sidewalk, not by the property owner, by somebody who knows. All this was before somebody had gone on trespass to their house to cut away at the bushes, which seemed very odd. It has unfortunately been a weirdly contentious issue. So I want to set the stage of what we're talking about here. So anyway, thank you.
Did you notice her gestures? She reminded me of the mean girl in school, set on trashing someone's reputation. And what is she talking about? Those bushes she claims someone clipped still look the way they've looked for years, still overhanging the sidewalk she says she walks on. She wants to set the stage, all right, for what you will soon see. Our appeal was presented at the city's formal session in writing as well as orally by my wife, a neighbor, and an attorney, and it was comprehensive. It pointed out the many downsides of such excessive, wasteful lighting. It also pointed out that businesses located next to residential areas in the city's downtown district must turn off lighting of their buildings by 10 p.m. so as not to disturb residents. So why would the same consideration not be extended to the residents of other neighborhoods? Most importantly, it pointed out the bad precedent this new lighting would be for historic Ghent. But incredibly, the members of the Norfolk City Council did not bother to discuss any of these issues. Instead, they turned in their seats to listen to Councilwoman McClellan, who didn't address any of the issues either. She had her own agenda.
So I live next door, adjacent street, so I happen to know this property very, very well. I see it every day. I see it every night.
Remember, this is all she sees of the lit-up house from her house, not this nor this.
The comments that I prepared before I vote start with a quote from an email that I was forwarded, and the quote was, "Mean people are unhappy people." So this came from one of the appellates, Georgette Constant, who wrote this into an email to the owner adjacent to the property in question. Ms. Constant was attempting to gain the neighbor's support in her opposition to the lighting. And for what it's worth, that neighbor and this neighbor, as I mentioned, I live next to it, both support the lighting.
The woman who shared my wife's personal email with Andrea McClellan has not lived in the house next door to the house with the lights for many years, since long before the lights went up. My wife was trying to explain to this woman what it is like to actually see the lit-up house in one's windows every night. And when my wife talked about why people are mean, she was wondering why anyone would refuse to turn such lighting off by midnight, especially when it is only the closest neighbors who see it at night. Who walks around a neighborhood looking at houses after midnight?
Ms. Constant's husband has posted sarcastic and, in my opinion, mean-spirited, offensive, and bullying posts 14 separate times on Nextdoor. 10 of those after the ARB vote.
Of course, I posted after the Architectural Review Board voted, since the City Council still could reverse what that board had done. My posts were to inform neighbors about the many downsides of such lighting and to point out its unreasonableness. I never posted anyone's name or address. Let's see if my posts were as horrible as Councilwoman McClellan says. Here's one linking to an article about how excessive light at night is bad for people's health, and another linking to the website of an anti-light pollution organization, and one about how the Ghent Neighborhood League opposed the Architectural Review Board's decision, and a couple about the International Dark Sky Movement, which many cities around the world are starting to endorse, but not Norfolk, Virginia yet. And a post linking to a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service article about how excessive nighttime lighting adversely affects wildlife, especially birds, like the yellow-crowned night herons who nest in the trees of our neighborhood and fish in the waters of the Hague. I posted too about what it's like to have all this unnatural light shining in one's windows at night, after the people with the lights refused my wife's request that they turn them off by midnight. They told her she should buy blackout shades. And I talk about the ethics of such lighting. When there are so many downsides to it, and many neighbors, even the local civic league, oppose it, why not consider whether it is right to do it? And whether it would be right for everyone to do it should be considered too.
Mr. Alan Gregory, as he's posted on Nextdoor, uses images of Jesus in the term, "What would Jesus do?" as it relates to the lighting, along with another picture of Jesus with the disciples about this. I think that's in response to the fact that the have a sign because they're a proud Norfolk Christian family, so he decided to go all in on Jesus.
I went to Norfolk Christian myself, learned a lot about Jesus there too. The humor of this image lies only in its anachronism, Jesus wearing sunglasses and contemplating a modern-day light switch. Is there any doubt about what he would do in this situation? But if you don't want to answer the question, just call the guy who asked it a bully. Of course, that's the real Jesus, not this guy. The humor in him is the absurdity of the real Jesus saying such a thing.
In another post, he uses the Grinch and images of South Park. That could be funny, a little sarcastic.
It was the architects of the Architectural Review Board I called the Grinches who stole the night. After all, they broke the city's historic lighting guidelines to do it. Here's the image I posted with the South Park kids. Do their mouths and teeth remind you of anything? And there's something Andrea McClellan failed to mention about my Nextdoor posts. Someone kept anonymously reporting them as shaming and having them removed, often almost as soon as I'd posted them, even purely informational ones like these. Since Andrea McClellan, the outspoken woman not Nextdoor, and the people with the lights all had Nextdoor accounts, I suspect it was one or more of them who kept silencing me.
It is a crazy situation that we're talking about right now. This lighting it's nice. It's a matter of opinion on this.
Sunsets are nice too. Would you want one glaring through your windows at you all night long?
I am agreeing with the Architectural Review Board, members whom we, as a body, have appointed, who are expert in this field, who are architects, who are landscape architects. I agree with them. I live next door to this property, and it enhances our neighborhood. It enhances the value of this property and all of our properties, in my opinion.
The City Council has overruled the Architectural Review Board many times because the Architectural Review Board makes mistakes. There are also architects on the Ghent Neighborhood League's Project Review Committee, which investigated this lighting and unanimously opposed it. And all the members of the Project Review Committee are residents of Ghent, so they have a personal interest in maintaining the character of its historic districts. Then the councilwoman got in this one last jab.
So let me end with saying, I agree with one thing that was written by my opponent. Mean people are unhappy people, and I hope that they can find happiness in some way other than through social media bullying. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for letting me explain my position here.
Never mind that many other neighbors and the Ghent Neighborhood League opposed this lighting too. Andrea McClellan says she likes these lights, and that's that. So without one word of discussion of the issues, the members of the City Council voted to approve this new lighting precedent for historic Ghent, and to allow the lights to remain on all night long. In other words, they did exactly what Andrea McClellan wanted them to do. Did you notice Councilwoman McClellan's slip of the tongue, how she referred to my wife as her opponent?
I agree with one thing that was written by my opponent.
So when she got to City Council to approve this new lighting precedent, was she doing what was best for her neighborhood, or was she getting back at her opponents? Perhaps Andrea McClellan should have recused herself. You see, my wife and I have indeed been Andrea McClellan's opponents. It all started when we were building our house near hers, and Andrea McClellan lied about our house to the City Planning Commission. I had to ask the City Council to recuse her from any further consideration of our house. One neighborhood theory was that she was annoyed because our house blocked her view of the downtown fireworks displays. When my wife and I led the effort to save the neighborhood's historic pedestrian bridge from the shabby, rusting padlocks defacing it, Andrea McClellan attacked us again on Facebook and even in mass emailings. She called us the Grinch who stole locks. We and other neighbors had to go to court to get the Norfolk City Council to finally remove the locks and start taking proper care of the old bridge. Neighbors showed us we were not the only victims of Andrea McClellan's cyberbullying. For example, there was the time she disparaged some learning different children on Facebook. Who would do something that
Sarcastic and, in my opinion, mean-spirited, offensive, and bullying.
My wife and I decided it was our duty to oppose Andrea McClellan, since anyone whose spitefulness leads her to bully people and who even uses her public office to do it is unfit for public office. So we started making YouTube videos, like the one you are watching now, to inform the voters about her. We also made videos about her dishonesty in her political campaigns. For example, she touted herself as an entrepreneur, but see the facts.
Bankruptcy.
She lied too when she aspired to be Virginia's lieutenant governor, claiming she had 40% of the vote, yet she came in a distant fourth place, even lost in Norfolk, her own hometown. And there was the time she stole her political opponent's web domain name to redirect people looking for his website to hers. What kind of person does something like that? And where did much of the $1 million she spent on her failed political campaigns to get herself elected to higher office come from? So do you think our YouTube videos, all of which are demonstrably true, had anything to do with Andrea McClellan using her city council seat to attack my wife and me?